We're here today to share the stories of our Collegiate Mental Health Innovation Council members. CMHIC is dedicated to finding and highlighting student leaders who filled gaps in traditional supports and services on their campus. Stay tuned to hear their stories and their programs in their own words. Hi everybody, I'm Kelly. Welcome to our discussion today with Nehi, who is a member of CMHIC this past year and has done really awesome work at the community college level. So Nehi Shola-Dare is an international student from Nigeria. When she was on the council, she was a student at Spokane Community College in Washington State, but has now moved on to Washington State and she's studying neuroscience. She's really passionate about mental health, some of which has to do with her experience with her brother and her personal experience, and she'll tell you a bit more about that. She did a bunch of really cool stuff on campus, including creating a mental health awareness club, and it combined a number of resources for students, including awareness, but also a really cool program called Therapy Thursdays that she'll share more about. And she hopes to bring her work to Nigeria to address stigma and be involved in efforts more in global mental health outside of just the U.S. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Nehi, to share a little bit with folks about your history, why you got involved in mental health, and how you ended up creating the club that you've created.
Thank you, Kelly. Like Kelly said, I'm from Nigeria. I grew up with 3 brothers in a Christian household back home. And one of my older brothers lives with epilepsy. And my first experience with his seizure crisis was at 13 years old, where I was home alone with him and he was having a seizure episode, and there was nothing I could do. I was so scared. The only thing I had seen my parents do was get warm water, get anointing oil, which is just olive oil that a pastor has prayed on, and they would put plastic spoon in his mouth, and I wasn't really sure how to go about that, but that experience really sparked my interest in learning more about the brain. And also my brother's experience with stigmatization at school. I would have my friends and every other person at school run away from him because he lives with epilepsy, and people mostly refer to him as being possessed by evil spirits or having sickle cell disease. And that, I don't lie, I found myself even passing on that stigma to him, which is really sad. And I'm really sad about that. But throughout that, I went with my passion for the medical field, and my goal eventually is to become a neurosurgeon because we need those in Nigeria. And about 4 years ago, I left the country to a medical school in the Caribbean, where I attended for 2 years, and suddenly found out the school had falsely advertised their accreditation. Out of frustration, of course, I had to move. So I moved to the United States with very limited funding. When I got here, I first went to school at Liberty University for a year, and that was the first time I came face to face with being a minority, and I was very lonely. I had no friends. I would often isolate myself from every other person, and through that experience, almost being deported back home because I couldn't pay my tuition, having to look for a place to live, living with temporary homelessness during the summer for at least a week, that really, really put me in a depressive mode. And for months and months, I contemplated going to the counseling center, but until I left Liberty University, I could not bring myself to actually seek help. And we all know that, or studies have shown that isolation and loneliness are major risk factors for suicide, suicidal ideation, and other mental health challenges. So that was really when I started considering the possibility of suicide. And so when I moved to Spokane Community College, because it's cheaper and it's more affordable, for about 3 months, I was still living with depression. I was really sad. There was nothing more I could do. I finally brought myself to go to the mental health clinic. And when I got there, before I could even go there, my first experience was calling the health clinic and asking them, what services do you have for students like me? I would like to talk to someone. And I was told that it's on a walk-in basis. And so a week later, I went to the health clinic. Since it's on a walk-in basis, I got there and I was told that, oh, I need to make an appointment with this psychiatric nurse practitioner. So I made an appointment and I was not able to see her until like 2 weeks later. So a month passed from when I initiated seeking help to actually seeing someone. And I know that if I was in crisis, my story could have ended differently. So that was the frustration that really pushed me to start the Mental Health Awareness Club at Spokane Community College. And starting that club was was really stressful, because the first response I got from people around was the school would not be open to isolating a group of people. And I didn't really care. I knew that something had to be done about that. Students can't seek help and then it takes 4 months for them to actually get help that they need. So I continued looking for 5 more students so that I could set up my club and become an established club on campus. I was also able to recruit an advisor who is actually the only licensed mental health professional we have on campus. So we started the club back in last year, 2018 May, and we didn't really do anything until September, where I was able to get more members and we started creating awareness on campus. We contributed to setting up the #Reasons I Speak exhibit, which is an interactive exhibit where students could come learn more about mental health resources on campus and also write down reasons why they speak up for suicide prevention. This happened in September of 2018. And after that, we moved on to setting up a way to compensate for the limited services available to students on campus. So we were able to arrange therapy Thursdays for students with my advisor. So we have mental health interns who mainly provide therapy sessions to students. And as a student of Spokane Community College, you only have the privilege of getting 10 sessions throughout your time as a student on campus. And honestly, I limited the number of times I would set up my appointment just so I wouldn't use up my 10 sessions. And because of that, that was why we decided to set up Therapy Thursdays. And Therapy Thursdays was majorly focused on addressing 2 main issues that I had experienced and fellow students had experienced. We wanted to address isolation and loneliness, which I said before are major risk factors of suicide, suicidal ideation, and mental health challenges. And we also wanted to develop life skills, because most of the time you go to, like, I went to see a psychiatric nurse practitioner, which is the only professional we have on campus aside from the licensed mental health professional. And the nurse practitioner only comes once a week for very, very limited hours. So she's not able to provide services for students promptly. But that's by the way. So we focused on developing life skills. And when I went to the psychiatric nurse practitioner, we talked about my experiences, my struggles, but we mostly focused on serotonin being the major cause of my depressive mood. And I just thought to myself that most times students go to seek help and their experience with mental health gets reduced to just chemical imbalances in the brain. And for there to be a chemical imbalance in the brain, I believe there must have been a stressor that caused that. And if we don't focus on addressing the stressors, there's bound to be a relapse. There's bound to be students who actively seek therapy but still end up killing themselves. And so we decided to focus on life skills because we know that students are stressed, they're confused, they're overwhelmed, they isolate themselves, they experience peer pressure, they experience the pressure of fitting in amongst other people, even financial problems. And so we focused on developing life skills like communication skills, conflict management, time management, how to deal with stress, how to react to stress, what to do when you're feeling stressed. And I really learned a lot. Every Thursday, I would look forward to going to therapy Thursdays because I knew it's just 1 hour in my week where I just get to talk about everything I'm experiencing and also learn how to deal with those experiences. So that was amazing. And another project we worked on as a club was updating the student ID card with crisis text lines. This was initially inspired by Active Minds, but also mainly inspired by the sudden change in the first call for help line. So the first call for help line is run by Frontier Behavioral Health, and it's a mental health facility that provides services to people around Spokane and Washington State. So they have a crisis text line, a crisis call line actually. It's called First Call for Help, and that everybody got familiar with that. But because they wanted to be able to provide services to other regions, they changed the line. And because of that, we decided to update the campus ID card with crisis text lines and National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, just so we can students can have easy access to mental health resources. It's during the 4 weeks I was waiting and I was frustrated. I could have looked up online, but that never really occurred to me that there were actually crisis text lines available. I knew there was 911, but 911 is mainly for an emergency, and I didn't think my situation was an emergency. So we worked on that, and starting fall of 2019, every single student ID card printed at Spokane Community College will have the crisis text line and National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Yay!
That's awesome. Congrats.
Another project we worked on was we were able to organize meditation workshops for students. This didn't happen very frequently mainly because of funding issues. Being at a community college, I know I always go back to this, but we got very limited funding. And even until I left campus, we weren't able to secure funding. We were able to secure funding, but it was at the end of the school year. That was when we were able to secure funding for the club. But we organized meditation workshops for students to distress. And another project we worked on was also, we were able to convince some of our instructors to include mental health resources and mental health services around campus on their syllabus, because that way we're able to normalize the fact that people live with mental health challenges, and it's okay. There are resources out there. Just go and try to seek help. And another thing I would like to touch on is that one thing that was very unique to the Mental Health Awareness Club at Spokane Community College is that we had members that were 50 years old who used to be drug addicts. We had members who were as young as 16 years old who were homeless because of their sexual preferences. And so we had members with very, very unique lived experiences. And with that, we were we made a conscious effort to make sure that that environment, people could come there and be vulnerable. And even with the vulnerability, you could feel supported, and you could feel that you're not the only one going through any challenge or any struggle. And I was able to find comfort in that. Yeah. Is there anything else you would like me to talk about?
No, that's amazing. So much awesome work and change in such a short period of time. And you kind of touched on this with the large age range of the folks that you worked with and limited funding, but especially now as you've transitioned to Washington State. Can you talk a little bit more about the specific challenges of starting something like this at a community college? Because much of what we've highlighted at MHA with the College Council in the past, but also I think a lot of the other college mental health resources aren't specific to community colleges. So it will be awesome to hear your perspective on recruitment, but also just like what was different about starting a club and maintaining a club at the community college level.
So at a community college, almost, if not every single student there is juggling being a full-time student. And also, they have at least 3 jobs. I had at least 3 jobs, even with my full load of 20 credits. And so people were willing to get involved. But also, at the same time, people didn't have time. People would come to school early in the morning, 7, and at most, they leave by 2 p.m. and school is literally like a graveyard after 2 p.m. Mm-hmm. No one is willing to stay back to commit at least 1 hour to an activity. And also another struggle that we experienced was that people didn't like the word mental health awareness. That was something that was actually feedback I got from one of the members of the school administration, that changing the wording might be able to get students involved. And that was why most of our flyers, we didn't include mental health problems or mental health issues. We put mental health challenge because challenge is more positive. So we were able to consciously change our wording to get members. But even with that, the most members we had wasn't more than 10 students that were involved at a single meeting. And that was very frustrating because every time, almost all my free time on campus was spent tabling. So I would put my table outside or the main cafeteria with resources and try to get people involved, try to get people to come to therapy Thursdays. And most of them always gave the excuse of, I have work. And that's what you would experience with community college. So I was saying another problem I encountered being at a community college is that the turnover rate is very high. At community colleges, you have students who come in for as little as 1 quarter and at most for 2 years, as opposed to a university where you have students coming during the freshman year and they spend at least 4 years at a university. And so they have more time to build a sustainable program. But I only spent 1 full year and 2 quarters at SCC, and SCC is Spokane Community College. And because of the high turnover rate, it's hard to set up or create or establish a sustainable program because people leave every 2 years. Mm-hmm. So the little time you have, it's make the most of it, really. And I was able to find someone who is willing to continue, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the one thing that I wanted to go back to that you mentioned before is you talked about changing from changing the language to say, you know, mental health challenges and trying to make it more positive. The other thing that you mentioned, or one of the other things that you mentioned, was the timing, and after 2 p.m. nobody's on campus. So how did you deal with that challenge in creating the group? Did you move the times of the meetings, or how were you able to adapt to the community college students' schedule?
Yeah, initially Therapy Thursdays was scheduled for afternoons, but we ended up moving it to from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. because more students are on campus during that time. And in order to even create awareness and get tables out with mental health resources and more information about our clubs, there were times I missed my lab just to be able to make that. I missed my chemistry lab to be able to make up for that. And I'm not sorry about it, but that's some of the sacrifices I had to make just so we could be able to reach more students during that time. So.
In your initial outreach, did you hear back from folks pretty quickly, or how long? Like, what was the process like for you? Just saying, obviously, there's a huge need for this, and I want to create something, to actually getting people involved. Was it a slow process, or were you just putting up posters everywhere and seeing what happened, or how did that work for you?
Yes, I put posters everywhere. Luckily, I was in charge of graphics and marketing on campus, and so it was easy for me to print posters and also create posters for the club. So I would walk around campus, go to different buildings and post and put the posters up on bulletin boards. I also use the school app. The school has an app, and every time I posted on the school app, I always made sure there was something personal about it. And I was able to get people talking about it, but still no one would show up to meetings. No one would show up to Therapy Thursdays. There was a time it was just me and the mental health intern during one of the Therapy Thursdays. And that was when it brings me back to some of the problems you might face as setting up a program. I was feeling very inadequate. I was wondering what more I could do. I was actually crying that day because it felt like everything I was doing was going to waste. Like I was the only one benefiting from it, and I wanted more students to benefit from it. And so, yeah, it's really tough.
Were you able to build relationships with any of the other, because I know you were involved in co-founding a pre-health club, and you were involved in mentoring young people and in the networking. Did you utilize those different groups or groups that you weren't in to push out the Therapy Thursdays and the group generally?
Yes, every single place I went to, I talked to every single person about the Mental Health Awareness Club. And I told them to come to meetings and come to Therapy Thursdays. It's just 1 hour out of your time. Just make some time for your brain health. And I got another member. In fact, the person who I said would be able to continue with the club is actually a member of my other club. So, yeah. I reached out to people everywhere.
That's awesome. Yeah, just anybody, that's what I hear a lot. Anybody who will listen, I will talk to you about mental health and try to convince you to come do something.
Yeah. I also put posters in different offices. I put posters in the Global Education Office, which is the office in charge of international students. I put posters there, posters in the health clinic, everywhere. Really.
Did you have a lot of international students involved in the program?
Throughout the existence or the duration of that program, I only had one international student attend Therapy Thursdays. And luckily for me, she's one of the students I actually tutor at the tutoring center. And so we're able to build a relationship, and we still communicate and keep in touch till today. But before I left, I know I had a conversation with our advisor, the international student advisor, and she did mention that they were going to include mental health services in the student health insurance. So that's something that would be amazing if it actually comes through.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you were able to accomplish so many things and make such a big impact on the campus in a really short amount of time, using and coming from the things that were really hard for you. And I think it's always so awesome to see people use their biggest struggles to help other people. So my next question is, now that you are at Washington State, I know that we spoke about earlier off the interview how different it is coming from your community college to the four-year university. Do you have any plans on getting involved in mental health awareness or clubs or bringing therapy Thursdays to your new school?
Yes, actually, I just reached out to so Washington State University has the mental health clinic. It's called the Counseling and Psychological Services CAPS, and I just reached out to the outreach person, telling her I would like to organize the #ReasonsISpeak exhibit. And so I've submitted an outreach request form and hopefully still waiting for them to get back to me. But luckily for me and luckily for the students on campus, WSU is doing a very good job with creating mental health awareness and providing services for students, because I believe they had a case of suicide a few years ago. And I think that was a wake-up call for them. But that's the thing with schools. We don't need to wait for someone to kill themselves before we actually take action to provide help to students. So, yeah, I plan on, it's still taking me some time to adjust and get involved with different clubs, but I plan on continuing my mental health advocacy. It's not going to stop. Yeah.
So one of the ways that I've been closing these interviews, you spoke a little bit about some of the advice you'd give to students who are trying to start similar things at the community college level. But the question I want to pose to you is, what would you say to your younger self once you were getting started? If you could kind of speak to that. You know, lots of young people reach out to us, and you know, I know when I was getting started in mental health advocacy, I had no idea what to do or what was out there, or putting yourself out there and being vulnerable and sharing your story. It's really scary, and there's so much, it feels like there's so much at risk and there's so many things to be done. What advice would you give your younger self?
So I would tell myself, well, I'm a very shy person, so it took some time before I could actually bring myself to reach out to people, to actively recruit members for the club. So I would tell myself to reach out to people, to talk to other people, I was scared to, just like you said, to be vulnerable. And yeah, I would tell myself to reach out to people and be willing to ask for help. It's okay to want to ask for help. So I would tell myself to ask for help and reach out to people. I would also tell myself to take it slow, because there were times where I was getting better with my depressive mood, but there were times where, because things weren't going as I planned, I relapsed into a worse state or a more depressive state. And so I would tell myself to take care of myself during that time. I would also tell myself to make friends and be willing to build a community. Eventually, I was able to get over that, but it took some time before I could actually open up and be vulnerable. That's why we emphasize vulnerability at Therapy Thursdays, because it's important. And we need to be vulnerable. We need to talk to people. We need to let people come in, and we need to let people share in our struggle and also share in other people's struggles. Yes.
Well, thank you, and thanks for all you've done and for all you're doing, and for taking time to share with everybody, and obviously participating in this past year's council. And thanks to everybody who's listening. You can learn more about Nehi's program and her work by checking out the CMHIC report that'll be linked below. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.